As business owners, entrepreneurs, family men, it's difficult for us to find the time to put together projects like these. Even though it's something we really want to do, unfortunately, taking care of the things we have to take care of comes first. However, because of viewer support from people like you, we're able to continue doing this. Please consider joining our Patreon and supporting the Burn and Return podcast. You're listening to Burn and Return, a weekly 1-hour podcast covering news from the agricultural and turfgrass industries.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of Burn and Return. For those of you that are tuning in for the first time, we hope you stick around. As one of my favorite things to say is that we're assholes, we're not scumbags. And so we're going to try and share the news that we have come across over the last week or two and talk about maybe little deep dives on it. So that way you can stay up to date with what's going on in the world and how it influences the green industry. And in things that need to be dissected a little further, we'll take it a little further and see what we can unpack there. And hopefully by the end of this, everybody's a bit more educated. And if we're not capable of doing that, at least you had some laughs along the way, which is, to be honest, our entire priority through this is more entertainment than anything else. And so take it for what it's worth. We're here to entertain. And if you don't find us entertaining, that's perfectly okay, too. We will continue to do this, whether you think we're funny or not. But listen, the real reason why we're funny on this show is nothing to do with me. It has to do with these two guys over here, Mr. Ryan DeMay and Ray Ito. Gentlemen, how in the hell are you doing?
Well, hey, a couple of things real quick. I'm super excited to be here. It's Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to you, Matthew, and to all the fathers out there. Ray, who is our agronomic father, right, that we look up to and probably should
Daddy, right?
beat us more as children. And Jay Pink, who's the father of this show, because let's be honest, if he didn't wrangle up all of us goddamn kids, we wouldn't get anywhere. So thank you to all the fathers. We appreciate you. And
can I go on a tangent real quick?
You can, yeah.
It's going to be a good one.
Okay.
For the fathers that are out there, I want you to take it upon yourself this Father's Day to be the absolute best dad that you can possibly be the absolute best partner to your spouse that you can possibly be, because the whole premise behind being a man is being the best that you can be day in and day out to support your kids, to support your family, to support your partner. So think about that each and every day when you're having a shitty day and you feel like being an asshole or whatever. Don't suck it up, tough it out, put a smile on your face, take care of your family. That's what's most important. All right, that's it. That's all I have.
Great message. It's only turf. It will grow back, but your kids will grow up and move on, and you'll have nothing left to show for it. So the wise person that told me that.
Why?
Wise.
Why are you putting me in the nursing home? Because you're an asshole. That's why. See ya.
Because
Shady Pines Ma. And that was actually that was actually my threat. However, because my dad was such a good dad, that was not his fate. Okay? That was not my father's fate. Because he was such a good dad, I said, I told him, I joke about Shady Pines all the time, but Dad, you're too good for that. So don't worry.
I don't think it'll be Shady Acres for me. I think it'll be a Sealy Posturepedic pillow that smothers my face. If it really can. I would ask for it.
I might deserve to.
I would ask for it. But all right, listen, a lot of headlines to dive into tonight. Some deep ones too.
Yeah, J Paint, kick us off on the headlines here. I'm breathing into the microphone on purpose.
Nothing to fear here. This is just the news.
Oh, what a funny thing to start that off with. Nothing to fear here. This is just the news. Just kidding. Just kidding. This is just the news. And what is absolutely frightening as hell to me is the way this article is titled is pure politicalization. This is politic fodder right here. And it is designed to make people crazy and to draw an association between two things that are regarded as bad to link them together. And so one cannot think of one without the other being in the same realm. And this will be the headline. Court rejects Trump era EPA finding that weed killer safe. And what are they talking about? They're making it a prominent stance of Trump's presidency that he was a major proponent of glyphosate, as if that was like his policies, that how he envisioned America being run. Somewhere in that top 10 was the use of glyphosate for every man, woman, and child across the world. And the reason why they're doing this is to make people crazy and to demonize glyphosate. That is the only reason. And I'm sorry if, and gentlemen on the panel, I'll let y'all have your own say on this, but that is 100% how this reads to me. And it goes on to continue. Actually, so listen to this first line here. This isn't even the byline. This is the first line right here. A federal appeals court on Friday rejected a Trump administration finding that the active ingredient in the weed killer Roundup does not pose a serious health risk and is not likely to cause cancer in humans. Here we go. It was a Trump administration finding that glyphosate does not pose. Never mind the fact that there's been over 1,000 trials conducted across many over the last 40 years. But all of a sudden, this is a Trump deal. What in the hell is going on? This is insane. The Center for Food Safety, one group to challenge the decision, called Friday's ruling a historic victory for farm workers and the environment. Legal critics said the EPA shirked its duties under the Endangered Species Act. We agree and remand for the agency for further consideration, wrote Friedland, a nominee for former President Barack Obama. The decision gives voice to those who suffer from glyphosate's cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. EPA's no cancer risk conclusion did not stand up to scrutiny. The court agreed the EPA needed to ensure the safety of endangered species before greenlighting glyphosate. Okay, and we can go on and on here. This is clearly an article that is under, for all intents and purposes, let's shit on glyphosate. So if we have to do this again, let's continue to do this. First and foremost, there have been 3 recent articles that have come out, and J Pink, I've listed one here from TNF Online. This is a white paper that was conducted, and this research study here shows the effect of glyphosate-based herbicides on human health were studied at the cellular level based on their toxicity to liver, lungs, and nerve tissue. The inhibitory toxicity to cell viability by glyphosate-based herbicides was examined with cell-based systems using 3 human cell lines, HepG2, A549, and SHSY5Y. Data obtained showed that all tested ethoxylated formulants and their mixtures with declared active ingredient glyphosate, isopropylamine salt, have significant inhibitory effect on cell proliferation, while the declared active ingredient has no toxicity. So what's interesting is that this actually had cell proliferation inhibitory effects, meaning that when it came to cancers, glyphosate, isopropylamine salt, actually slowed the development of cancer. This is not the only one. This is one of 3 that have been published within the last 3 years. Out of 16 regulatory agencies in the world, 15 have declared glyphosate as non-toxic. There is only one. And this whole thing began back in 2012 with Seralini and his activism that was put out there. And it's been amplified over and over and over. And so now, to really drive it in, to absolutely drive this in and to reach peak state of mania among the population, How do you do that? You demonize it by equating glyphosate to arguably the most controversial administration we've ever had, the Trump administration. And they're linking that together right now while the January 6 hearings are going on, just to drive a further wedge. This is one more thing that you fall into, that if you support the use of glyphosate, therefore you are ultra MAGA. That's the landscape now that we're doing. That if you don't, I can't even fucking talk about what I actually wanted to say right there, and it's infuriating because we would be kicked off YouTube instantaneously. And what I want to know, we have reached such weird, critical levels of idiocy and bizarreness, and you're either on this side or that side, that where does it end? Where does this end? We disregard any and everything that points to whether it's rooted in science, safety protocols, whatever. Now, how controversial is it to say I support science? That's a controversial thing to say now, because you can cut the data to make it state whatever it is you want to state. So it's all, at this point, it is all, what side of the aisle, what team are you on? And if you're on that team, you have to align 100% down the board this way. There's no faltering. There's no wavering. You're on this or you're that. There's no in between. There's no more gray area. This is nuts. This is nuts. And it pisses me off because there's no more honesty taking place. Ray, Ryan, someone else talk about this. This is designed to make people crazy, right?
Yeah, I think from a headline, headline writing is one of the most important things that you can do in journalism, right? It's one of the jobs that not everybody gets to do. And so when you are afforded and earn that opportunity, right, you have to write good headlines. So, you could say that this did its job. It's caught people's attention and things like that. So let's unpack and think about what you're saying. And I agree with most of it. I think that conflating these issues and kind of bringing them together, right, is clearly trying to drive a wedge, right? And say, hey, like what you said, this is a one-sided affair. You're either in or you're out. And I don't know that that's the case. I think that, how do I say this without getting us kicked off either? I believe in all facets you have to trust science, right? And what has the science told us over and over and over again? Even last week, Matt, you weren't here, but there was an article from the EU, right? The European Union. Their scientists just recently, within the last month or two, said that glyphosate is not carcinogenic. They're doing a larger study to look at real-world uses, right? So I'm assuming residues and things like that, and water quality, things of that nature. And that's going to come out next summer, next July, and we'll have a little bit better, a little bit better viewpoint on that. But here's my thing: is if we're trusting the science, and I think all three of us, regardless of whatever political disposition that you have, I think we're all three men that would say, hey, we trust the science, right? We think that if it was one study and it was like, an outlier, maybe not. But numerous studies, have said the same thing over and over and over again. Yes, it is. It is the most researched active ingredient that we have out there in the marketplace. In history, too.
Yes.
Really, in history.
This was the most thoroughly researched product, yet to me, this is a super disturbing trend. And do you know why this is so disturbing to me?
Tell me.
This just politicizes science.
Yep.
So, for example, if we don't agree with something, we just attach it to our political demon of the day. And by the way, this is not the first issue where the public's perception and response to various issues has been thoroughly poisoned by it being attached to a political figure. And I'm not going to go any further than that because, of course, I don't want us to get kicked off.
It's so obvious
because
what you're talking about, and that's exactly it. That was with the wormhole I was going to go down, but you can't because I'm scared that I'm going to set off some sort of AI software that's gonna shut it down. You know, it's persona
we
non
better
grata.
not we better not go there. But okay, the fact of the matter is, Matt, is that I have seen this even in the 1980s and the 1990s, in that already the science around pesticides has become so political. Okay, so political. I mean, because in the 1980s, it was, if you are in favor of this certain pesticide, oh, you are on this side of the political aisle. But let me ask you this. Whether you're right or left, don't you still all have to eat? I mean, don't you still all have to eat? And
I was gonna
and tell me
I was-
now. And also, whether you be right or left, tell me now that you are not also subject to the same public health vectors no matter which way you vote. Okay, because that's kind of what I'm getting at, because the world, especially developing countries, has suffered due to certain pesticides being unfairly demonized and campaigned against. And I'm talking about diseases like malaria. I mean, people suffer as a result of their country getting a political hair up their ass and saying it is more important for us to be quote unquote environmentally correct. And what that means is that if you have a lot of malaria bearing mosquitoes, my how unfortunate, it's more important to be environmentally and politically correct. There.
And hang on,
Rant
DeMay.
over.
I want you to follow up on that. And there's one more thing I want to say to add a little bit of diesel fuel to the fire real quick at a very high velocity. And I want to go back to where we were talking about Stephanie Seneff, the MIT researcher who was the one who unpacked the influence that glyphosate has theoretically on the gut biome and how that is the reason why we have autism rates developing like we do. And again, you know, that is one of the things that was also looked at. And if you look, there's so many people that stand on that. When we did that video on that, it's hilarious. I still get comments every week on it of somebody chiming in and being like, you're a piece of shit. You don't understand. Stephanie Seneff is a PhD. Who are you? Blah, 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 blah. And it has been looked at. And here's the thing is that you would have to consume, a 150-pound person would have to consume 330 pounds of legumes in a single sitting, consumed repeatedly over many months to get a high enough dose of glyphosate to damage his or her gut microbes.
Holy
That's
cow, man.
not
That's a lot of beans. That's
feasible.
a lot of beans.
That's not
That is a
feasible. But it's the stance that's being stood on to demonize this, to say that you're either on this side or you're on that side. You're either with Trump or you're against Trump. Glyphosate is pro-glyphosate is ultra MAGA. Anti-glyphosate is Biden. I don't know, but that's what it feels like. And why are they doing this now? What were you going to say to me? Because I need some level-headedness in here because I'm not real rich in it right now.
I think it's just commentary. Highly unfortunate that we can't have these discussions and have people who will sit there and say, well, because he or she says this must be their political ideology. That it is so now ingrained, right, in terms of positions you take on certain issues or thoughts that you have, that we cannot think cognitively and for ourselves any longer. That to me is troubling, scary, and just really fucked up. So there's that part. Go ahead, Ray.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and this is a larger trend where, and this was revealed to me in like the last 3 years, in that for a lot of people, something happened to us where we are unwilling and unable to accept any kind of perceived risk. Okay, that is what Stephanie Seneff plays on, is that she makes the claim that exposure to glyphosate will increase risk of autism and other problems. I mean, because, hey, glyphosate is not only blamed for autism, it's also blamed for various autoimmune conditions. But again, this all goes to what is the role of risk in our lives. And you know what the corollary to that is that knowing what one's risk is, how much responsibility is the individual willing to take for that risk? Because this is where our society is going, is that we as a society and societies throughout the world are getting to where individuals no longer want to take any kind of responsibility for any risk. They want to make it somebody else's problem. And you know what, guys? That is super foreign to me. And do you know why that is super foreign to me? It is because I had a father who, if I got hurt or did something to get in trouble, my father would not be looking to blame somebody else. He'd be whooping my ass hard and telling me, don't do it again, because you getting in trouble ain't somebody else's fault. It's your fault.
I think this issue, like many other that we face right now, so whether it's in medicine and pharmaceuticals, whether it's in energy production, oil and gas versus electric or green or whatever, it is all the same. We have been fast forwarded to the precipice of massive, huge changes in these fields, right? Think about this. To develop a vaccine 5 years ago would have taken 10 years, right? Would have taken a decade, right? It did it in a year. And now you hear about what is happening now with mRNA vaccines and how they're looking at that for other things, right? You think about, where we're going with energy and how we're in like the bully pulpit right now because, hey, guess what? Nobody wants to invest those billions of dollars of profit into more gasoline refineries. They're going to hold on as much as they can, right? If you're oil and gas, and if you're green energy, right? What's in your way? A lot of stuff, right? You got to figure this stuff out. And right now, who's trapped in the middle is people, right? Same thing with the medical field. Who's trapped in the middle between these diseases and between everything that we face with the technology and the money that is backing it? People. Last thing is this, right? Is agriculture. Where are we at right now with climate and weather and everything like that we're facing, whether you think it's cyclical or whether you think it's changing, regardless of what it is, right? We need to feed some motherfuckers on this planet, right?
Yeah.
And we don't have a very good way to do it right now without glyphosate. And we don't have a whole lot of evidence to suggest that glyphosate is doing an extreme amount of damage to our environment or to the people that live in it, right? In fact, it's helping. It's helping more than it's hurting. And to your point, Ray, it is assumed risk. It is assumed risk.
It is assumed. It is
and
assumed
there are
risk,
ways.
and
There are ways to avoid that if you need to. There are ways to do that. And what I'm saying right now is that until such time is that we can reinvent the wheel, and yes, are there chemical companies that are standing in the way saying, hey, yeah, we'd love to sell you more Roundup? Absolutely. But if you don't think that there's some smart people out there trying to figure out better ways to do it, and you don't think that that day will come, then you're an idiot. And if you don't think that up until that point that we need to use all the tools that we have legally available to us and that the science says works and is safe and is effective, then you too are a moron. It's just literally that simple. It's that simple, right?
yeah,
Well said.
it is that. Yeah, well said. Because risk and perceived risk and who's responsible for that risk has become a huge problem, because as it relates to, the issue of pesticides, for example, I can see cases and instances, even in this whole Roundup debate or glyphosate debate, where somebody didn't take responsibility for their risk, and then they turn around and say somebody else is responsible. Because I'll tell you guys right now, if I find out I have cancer tomorrow, do you think I'm going to go around blaming Bayer or Dow or Syngenta or whatever? Do you think I would do that?
No,
No.
Even if
not at all.
And no. And you know what? I would probably say, oh, stupid Ray, see what happens when you don't check your gloves for leaks. I would not look to blame somebody else. And because this is, my commentary, my sad commentary on the world as a whole is that everybody is always looking for somebody else to blame. Anything that happens, it's somebody else's fault. Be it, oh, it's Roundup's fault. Oh, it's Donald Trump's fault. Oh, it's the EPA's fault. It's always somebody else's fault. Well, how about just for once, people take responsibility for their own health and safety and stop looking at businesses and governments to take care of their own business?
Please coddle my feelings and wipe my ass for me, because it
Yeah.
hurts when I have to wipe
Yeah.
my boo-boo.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go on here because obviously this is, we've still got some other things we got to cover here. The system is at a tipping point. Lord have mercy. We are okay. Utah and this area of the West is really, really bad off when it comes to water, and not a little bit, but a lot, really bad off with water. And they're talking about more conservation programs that they're having to put into place because it is a massive, massive issue that is developing over there. That being said, DeMay, you have continued to put these up here to keep us kind of on point with this. What the hell do you think is going to start happening out there? Because I don't see any relief coming anytime soon.
Same. I mean, I don't know how. At what point you shut down? It can conserve enough water, right, to make it worth it. I've followed this loosely, for the last probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now. Just from California, especially, they've had their share of challenges, but certainly in the Colorado Valley, like they've got a lot of major problems here. So I think what it's going to come down to is that it looks like the federal government's going to take action, which they've always been kind of hesitant to do, at least in large part. And so, what is this? 10 million acre feet of water that they used last year, which is provisional estimates, nearly 3 times the upper basin's use when the river was only supplied with 3. Ooh, man. So yeah, so they're 40% short in some cases. I mean, so how do you drive down use that much? That's a tremendous amount. So I don't know if it starts to become something where you're going to see a lack of development, right, or a slowing of development because certain areas of this watershed are definitely growing. So how do you meet that demand, right? Well, you slow down development, and hopefully you can curtail what's already there. And I don't know, fellas, this is not a good time to be growing grass, I can tell you that.
Yeah, they're talking about getting rid of hydropower water. So, again, in a time where we have unprecedented power on our power grid as well, stress on our power grid as well. More power generations coming offline with no real easy replacement to it. So, not this is no bueno at all. And then this last one I wanted to talk to real quick is there were I don't know, somewhere around 10,000 cattle that just died relatively quickly out in Kansas. And for those of you that haven't seen this, it's kind of been in some strange places of the internet. And I'm not going to go through just a ton of it here, but just understand that there was a ton of cattle that quickly dropped dead. And you heard a lot of conspiracy theories of people saying that it's people putting pressure. Again, you look at there's been 94 incidences of food processors catching on fire this year. We're June 19th. That's a lot. And then all of a sudden you've got, the avian flu that's wiping out chickens at unprecedented levels. And now we've got 10,000 head of cattle that's just falling out. It's like, is someone intentionally going after the food supply? But there was one of the ranchers actually chimed in here and said that in particular, these calves were already fat, getting ready for slaughter. And there was no gradual increase in temperature. It went from cool to hot with no winds whatsoever, very high heat indexes, higher humidity than what they're accustomed to. So there was no acclimation period. And particularly these fat cattle that are ready for slaughter need longer acclimation periods in order to tolerate the swing in temperature. And so because that didn't happen, that's why you had such monumental die-off in a relatively short amount of time. Temperature was 108 degrees. The heat indexes were well into 120, 125 degrees. And unfortunately, in those kinds of conditions, there was just nothing. There was no way to escape it, even though they had access to water. It's not a matter of being able to drink water. It's a matter of literally their body temperature getting too hot too quick and them not being able to adjust to it. And so unfortunately that happens, and it did a number on the cattle feeder market. And again, where we're already facing monumental inflation, food security issues are creeping up every day, issues with fertilizer, one more thing to put out there. Now, on the flip side of this, 10,000 cattle sounds like a lot, but in reality, to put this into perspective, a few years ago, due to inclement weather, so like tornado outbreaks and stuff, I think this was in the last 7 years, we lost 156,000 head of cattle over a relatively short period of time. So 10,000 seems like a lot, but it's not the type of catastrophe and devastation that's going to mean that we're going to run out of beef or something.
Well, I mean, I can certainly empathize with the ranchers and certainly the cattle. I was taken down by the heat this past Thursday. I was at a commission, couldn't do our normal Thursday show. But you know what, guys? You know what's getting me through coming up on another hot week that the cattle just can't do. I've switched from Gold Bond to that drying agent that they throw out there in the baseball fields after the tarp comes off. And that has made all the difference in the world. And I can't wait for that data that comes out of the University of Kentucky to show me more about why that happens. And I hope that we have a YouTube channel that can explain the why a little bit better on that. And I will definitely supply them all the data. With that, why don't we go ahead and jump over to a mailbag question real quick?
You've got mail.
The first one here is from Luis. Luis said, first, thanks for everything you guys do. Huge help to the lawn enthusiast community. Question is, I have 10,000 square feet of Bermuda And the top test is the soil report for it. What is the best nitrogen source to help spread my Bermuda? I have a lot of bare spots. And 2, I already did a lime application of 20 pounds per 1,000 square feet. Mid-month, should I continue throughout the summer months? Do you have a lime application preference that can help me?
Ooh.
Any input would be greatly appreciated. J Pink, do you have the soil test here? Let's see what we're looking at.
Oh,
You have a
boy,
soil
he's down.
pH of 4.8. Yikes.
Yow.
Yeah, I'll give you a recommendation on it's centipede. Wait, he said 10,000 square feet of Bermuda though, didn't he?
Yeah,
Yes,
and then it's
he
up
said
here, it says
10,000
not
square feet.
centipede
He said
up here, and then it says centipede down on the front. Does he got centipede in
Well,
the front and Bermuda in the back?
we'll talk about the
Okay.
Bermuda since that's what he was specifically asking. And there is no nitrogen source that's going to help you in this until you work your ass off on getting that pH up. Because at a soil pH of 4.8, your volatilization rate and all that is just going to be astronomically high. So you can continue. You're going to waste more than you apply. And so I would not be applying 20 pounds per 1,000 square feet of lime per month. I would be applying 50 pounds per 1,000 square feet. Probably every other month. If you did that every month, you would likely be caking on the soil surface. Ray,
Yeah,
Ryan,
it would look
what,
like
what, what are y'all looking at here?
It would look like it snowed if you pushed it to 50 per month. But then the next piece of this is water. Because without water, lime doesn't do much for you in terms of what it can do. And to be honest with you, at a pH of 4.8, here's what I would do. What I would do is I would plan on dropping down the required amount of lime. And because he has Bermuda, I would rototill that lime in, roll it, flatten it out, start watering. And you know what that would do? That would give
Tell
him
me.
a flat surface with pH adjusted soil that the Bermuda would rapidly retake from the existing stolons and rhizomes that the tillage just simply chopped up and redistributed.
Ray
How's
just
that?
Ray just went from take a baby aspirin every day to you're gonna need a fucking heart transplant. That was
Yeah. But then when somebody tells me thin turf that's kind of not doing too great anyway, and the conditions are this severe, yup, time to get the bone saw out, Ryan. Time to get the bone saw. We're
there's
spreading
nothing
some
I like
ribs.
doing than cracking a sternum and growing some new Bermuda. Baby.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Hey, if Green Dog says it, it must be true. So yeah, I guess Luis is gonna have to get himself a tiller and a whole fuck pile of lime.
Yeah, because here's the thing: is that at a pH that low, it's going to take forever otherwise to spread lime and get your pH up. Versus, at that rate, I'd be looking at tilling in up to 200 pounds of lime per 1,000 square foot, but that amount of lime got to get tilled in.
Think about those sad sacks of shit at Lowe's or Home Depot that are in charge of loading the bags for you. They're gonna be like, "How many bags did you get, sir?"
No.
Oh, I got all the bags. Just go ahead and put them right here.
You know what Luis
right here.
actually needs to do is get in contact with his local farmers co-op and say, "Hi guys, I'm going to need a
Fill up my
couple
pickup
pallets."
truck.
No, I'm just going to need a couple pallets.
Truck.
Drop
Right on the
drop
elevator.
the couple pallets. Yeah, right on my driveway because I'm going to be spreading that much lime. I mean, pH 4 point something. Yikes.
It's heavy.
It's
All
a
right.
Mhm.
Do we want to do one more?
Yeah. Here we'll jump into
we'll
one more
double-dip
here.
this
Let me open this up. This is Eric's here. He said he's got a two-parter here, and he does not think he's unique to him. First, he said, I like this here. To
Hear this
DeMay,
one.
this I feel like I'm going to the doctor asking to get in shape, but not willing to stop smoking or exercise. First question is
Guilty, Eric.
that he's got 60,000 square feet of lawn and pays for water by the gallon, so irrigation is out for the time being. So do you have any cultural practice advice to give him, knowing that he cannot feasibly water his 60,000 square feet?
Wetting agents would be about the only thing. Get yourself
You know
some
what
soak and
I'd say stop mowing.
apply it right
Yeah.
before.
You know what I'd also say?
Yeah.
If you can't water, don't fertilize either, because
That too.
the nitrogen is going to drive up water demand in grass. I mean, if you can't water, this is a situation where your turf area is going to have to go into what I call extremely low input mode. Less water, less fertilizer, less mowing. I mean,
you ready
that's
for
just
this?
where you're at. Yeah.
Are you ready for this?
Mhm.
I don't think he needs to not fertilize. I think Homeboy needs to use the correct source. So if you are going to fertilize and you're in St. Louis and you're taking a little bit of a risk here, I'll be honest with you, if it gets real hot and wet at the same time, but if you do need to fertilize, look at methylene urea, because it will only release when you get enough moisture in there, a little bit of temperature, right, to keep you
Good
going,
call.
give you a
Yep.
bump, get you a little bump every time you get some rainfall, and keep you growing green. So you only have to do it one time, because let's be honest, nobody probably wants to go out there and fertilize 60,000 square feet every 6 weeks because some dumbass app told you to. So keep that in mind.
Here's the second part of the question. He said it's linked to the high to cut. I feel like there's two polar camps to set your mower as high as it goes, and the camp of people that want to see how low they can get it. Damn polarized world we live in. I want to be in the middle with 2 to 3 inch grass that is playable for toddlers for kickball, catch, and general running around. I know that will come at the cost of weed pressure and heat stress, but cannot find any good advice on how to manage playable grass without irrigation.
Just mow it at 3. You mean give the simple answer? Mow it at 3 inches and be done with it. Don't move your mower deck up, down, do any of that bullshit. Just set it at 3 inches. Leave it there the entire year. Everything will be fine. Easy enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I would second
says-
that. I'd say don't try to mow lower.
And he says, again, I know in my situation, I cannot expect anything but dormant grass in August, but still looking for advice. As of now, I've just been mowing as often as I can at 3 inches to keep the grass in shape. Again, if you're going through record drought periods and stuff, there's no reason to cut grass that's already drought stressed. Typically it's not growing. So there's no real reason to run a mower across it. Mowing it as often as you can while it needs it. If it doesn't need it, then, the whole
Stop.
concept of
Yeah.
charity mowing dormant grass is a little bit silly at that point. And then he also sent in a soil test here that we can take a look at. He is exceptionally low in phosphorus and exceptionally low in sulfur as well. And so I would say, back to DeMay's point on methylene urea, Mesa, which is a homogeneous methylene urea ammonium sulfate, would be a good fit for you there. Wait, I didn't see a soil pH though. What is it? 6.6. Yeah, he can get away with it, and I think that would actually be
6.6 is
really
not low.
good
6.6 is not bad. I mean, actually, the only other thing that I'd be looking at is he might be a use case for a little bit of gypsum to bump up his calcium and his sulfur levels as well.
Yep, that's another way you could do that as well.
Yeah, because it's all about feeding what is low. I mean, that's all I can say about that.
It is, and you can, and you would probably, even though you're only at 14 parts per million of phosphorus, when it comes time to overseed this fall, use a quote unquote starter fertilizer that's going to be higher in phosphorus, and you get down a season's worth in a single application, and you'll be good. Moving on to this week's burns.
Sheila calls me
A
daddy.
settlement. Oof. Man, guys, did y'all hear about what happened in the UK? There was,
Uh-oh.
and look, this is not green industry related, but there is
Are you
some,
sure?
yeah. So, the United Kingdom's 16 Air Assault Brigade was under investigation over them making whoopee with a civilian woman who had been snuck into their barracks. And there was 8 of them, of the dudes on video with Sheila, and Sheila had made 31 visits over the last 5 months.
Ooh, boy.
Sheila
Oh
was
boy.
partying her rear end off, living her best
Oh.
life, was she?
That's a lot of tallywhacker.
that is going hard in the paint, as they say. Scott's Turf Builder Easy Seed class action lawsuit settlement. So Scott's is a turf builder easy seed that grows grass, quote unquote, 50% thicker with half the water. However, what happened is that they put this to test, right? Because it contains seed and a mulch and fertilizer, kind of all in one combination product here. But what they found out was that it didn't work. The super absorbent mulch competes with the germinating seed for available moisture. Therefore, the mulch is absorbing the moisture and is preventing the seed from absorbing the moisture, and therefore preventing the seed from germinating. And so, even though they were making these claims, it turns out they were pretty much all wrong, and they were not able to replicate any of the claims that were put out there by Scott's. And so Scott said, "Well, instead of litigating this over a long period of time, even though we don't agree with it, what we're going to do is we're going to refund people that have purchased this." So, yep, sorry, Scotts, y'all. It happens, and I think the whole reason why I think it's important to talk about is that there's a lot of these things that you add to absorb water. Remember that at a lot of the rates that we may be using these things, say, especially at low rates like 2-3 pounds per thousand, your density per square foot of these types of products is potentially low. Therefore, while it may absorb water, it may not absorb water within close enough contact to something that can actually take advantage of the water being right. So in this particular instance, the mulch is absorbing the water, but the grass can't take advantage of it. A lot of that probably has to do with density per square foot that it's actually out. And then the real one here that I wanted to get in here, in DeMay, again, I'm really going to lean on you to talk me off a ledge here. The USDA announces a dramatic increase in support for organic agriculture without the call for total transition. The USDA announced on first that it will provide a potential 15-fold increase in funding aimed at organic food production, up to a $300 million investment. The subject organic transition initiative provision is embedded in a new USDA food system transformation framework, whose raison d'etre is captured in the press release: to transform the food system to benefit consumers, producers, and rural communities by providing more options, increasing access, and creating new, more, and better markets for small and mid-sized producers. That funding for organic transition, the invocation of climate as a significant driver of multiple features of the initiative, and a focus on equity concerns are all welcome news. Beyond Pesticides maintains that it will be critical that this FSTF result in concrete goals that set out specific metric timeline, particularly around the magnitude of acres shifted towards organic production and the pace of phase out of non-organic substances and protocols, blah, 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 blah. And it goes on to talk about it. And this is actually a really long article here. And the further you read into it, the more it gets a little weird, I feel like. And the part I want to highlight about this is that, I'm not an anti-organic guy at all, but I think this narrative that, and there's certain statements in this that absolutely freak me out. And it's these statements that say, particularly around the magnitude of acres shifted to organic production and the pace of phase out of non-organic substances and protocols. Again, this is demonizing conventional agriculture. This is demonizing the agricultural systems that are capable of feeding the planet. What this is not talking about is how this $300 million investment is not going to increase food security. If anything, this is going to have a larger impact on the number of food acres required to grow food, the number of acres. Okay, so we have a larger land acreage that's being used to cultivate food. That is potentially more acres that are going to have to sit fallow or out of rotation for periods of time. And the amount of labor that's going to be required to take over these land acres and manage them to organic standards, right? So unfortunately, the environmental impact of this $300 million investment here is largely against the intent of it, which the intent, I assume, somewhere in here is going to be the environmental impact that we're going to have because we're using less of this and less of that and all that fun stuff. But here's the thing. And gentlemen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was pulling statistics over the millions of pounds of active ingredients that are applied. And this is either going to be synthetic crop applied pesticides or organic pesticides. And I'm not going to argue that there are plenty of organic pesticides that are essentially non-toxic. And I don't think anybody's going to argue because they very well know that there's also organic pesticides that are toxic, whether that be slightly or highly toxic or moderately toxic, right? However, the millions of pounds that are applied, there are significantly greater millions of pounds of organic pesticides applied than synthetic crop applied pesticides. In an effort to do better, are we really doing better?
No, not at all. And here's what can be classified as a quote-unquote organic pesticide. Neem oil, for example. And do you know what application rate for neem oil is, for example?
High.
We are talking about, for example, can you imagine applying actual amount, the equivalent of at least 2 to 4 gallons of neem oil per acre, per application? And in order for neem oil to work, you're also looking at an application rate or an application frequency of as often as every 7 days. Can somebody please explain to me what the benefit is of having to go spray a field every 7 days? I don't care what it is, be it organic or synthetic, when I consider the environmental impact of a agronomic practice also in terms of how much energy is needed to implement that agronomic practice. That always figures in when I want to make a judgment as to whether an agronomic practice is environmentally beneficial or environmentally harmful. I always take that into consideration. And when I do that,
if you think about it, if you're pulling a tractor across a field every 7 weeks, every 7 days, what is your fuel consumption there?
Yeah,
if we're trying to reduce fuel consumption and we're trying to increase our precision metrics to decrease fuel consumption across our green acres, it doesn't make sense to go this route.
Yeah, it makes little sense. And then conversely, Matt, do you know what one of the more toxic pesticides used in organic production is right now?
Copper sulfate.
Copper. Yeah, copper sulfate based compounds. And here's my little misgiving about using a lot of copper in a field. When you do that, you can actually build up toxic amounts of copper in the soil, because here's the problem with doing copper as a fungicide or bactericide. Copper is only effective as long as that copper application has formed a film over the surfaces of interest. So, when a plant grows, you need to apply more copper. And do you know how often you have to reapply that copper in order to maintain adequate film coverage on a plant, especially a rapidly growing crop? Every 7 days?
Yeah.
Here we go again.
Now, and I'll say this, that there is a certain amount of this that is the $300 million that's set aside for urban agriculture projects and to educate communities about farming and expand green spaces. And I think that piece of it is incredibly important. I think more people need to understand how to grow food and what is required to grow food. I think that level of education is immensely important. So I don't want to shit on this and say it's 100% bad. However, that piece being good, the part that freaks me out is when we start leveraging this language of how can we quickly phase out non-organic substances and protocols when we see historically what that leads to. DeMay, I'm trying to be here and there, right? Are these fair points, or am I getting a little too ultra Maggie over here?
No, I think
I had to say it again. I'm smiling.
I know.
By the way, it was a joke.
I know.
People can't see my face if they're listening. It was a joke.
Well, but this is, you make a point. This is an issue that people would, again, try to drive a wedge and say you're on one side or the other because of where you stand on this particular issue. And again, I try to look at it as objectively as I possibly can in all facets. And so, when you look at this and what they're trying to do, the good parts of it, right? So there's like $40 million in there for outreach and education, for what you just talked about, Matt, for people to learn how to grow their own food, right? For community gardens and things like that, that at that level, right? At the household level can work, right? Can be, fairly, I guess, rewarding in both in terms of the time spent, the knowledge gained, as far the investment there, right, of that knowledge, and then seeing results year over year. So you hope to see some stuff like that. I think, again, considering how we phase all this out, it's not just like, shutting off a spigot necessarily. How do we have enough arable acres, right, to farm and produce this? So I think in the article they call for the EU. I think what they want the EU to do is convert over 25% of their arable land, right, to organic production by the year 2030, I believe it was. So, if we did that here, what is the impact? And what are we actually growing? And are we growing what is both financially feasible, number one, and notwithstanding the fact that, part of this money, which is crazy to think about, but I think it was $60 million or more, was actually earmarked. So 20% of the money here was earmarked to catch up with a backlog of organic farming applications, right, from 2018. So from 4 years ago. That's how backed up they are. So again, is the infrastructure, the internal infrastructure within the government even in place, not even to oversee this, but let alone just say, hey, yeah, you can go ahead and get started? That's the concerning part. And it cuts both ways, right? What kind of oversight are we seeing at, on the conventional ag side, right? We're trusting that farmers, are doing the right thing. I think in the vast majority of cases they are. Are there going to be some shitbags out there? Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing is, it's good to see that they're dipping their toe in the water. I think, there should be some goals, right, in terms of a deadline and something that's measurable. Hey, we converted whatever, percentage of the land over to organic farming. Now, on the output side, do we still get the same thing? Do we still get what we need in terms of food production, forage production, crop production, all these things, right, that we need to make our system go? And, it talks about it a little bit in there. But Ray,
Mhm.
they're coming after your meat too. The
Yeah, that is, you
the-
see, because here's my little question about all of this emphasis on agricultural production, because I know of some foodstuffs that require minimal chemical inputs. And do you guys know what those foodstuffs are?
tell me.
Lamb and beef, especially if it's grazed on natural grasslands. Now, this whole push for organic production, the other facet to this push towards organic production is there's an agenda to make the majority of everybody's diet plant-based. That is the other facet of this. And I take issue with that because I know personally I cannot exist on plant-based. I mean, I need my carbs, but at the end of the day, I need natural animal-based proteins, and that it's not a burger thing or whatever they're touting as a beef substitute ain't gonna cut it for me. So, this whole thing about getting people to see food growing, I think that's a good thing. I have no problems with that because I think that a lot of people need to become connected with how food is actually produced. And
Yep.
when they see that for themselves in real time, I think a lot of these people will have an appreciation. I think they're going to, and you know what? The first time they see their tomatoes or their lettuce chewed up and decimated, I'm thinking that some of these people at least will start to think hard when the extremists go after the pesticides like how they have been. I mean, I think that's going to change some minds because I know for myself, when I saw the caterpillars and the beetles move in, that kind of adjusted my perception on the role of pesticides too, because my God, they're eating my food.
You
You
know,
know?
especially in urban environments, you're so detached from food production, right? And so exposing these people to it, and the very definition of the word sweat equity, I think applies to growing food more so than anything else in the entire world. And developing that sweat equity and the amount of loyalty and appreciation and almost a type of honor code that goes along with sweat equity. Exposing people to that, especially young people to that in urban environments, is critically important for the future of mankind, not just food production, but mankind in general. So there's pieces of this that are good. Again, it's the language thing of let's how do we phase this out as quickly as possible, that we're overlooking the reality of situations like Sri Lanka that we could talk about and point at, since it's the most recent example of how that would be a bad thing. Or if we just think about that, if we allocated 25% of our land acres and installed organic crop production there, knowing that we're going to be between a 30 and 40% yield decrease, then what does only 70% output on 25% of our land acres actually look like in terms of food security? And that is also a frightening number as well. So,
you see,
especially with the situation we're in right now.
that's my next question, Matt, because I want to know, okay, how do we maintain levels of food production, right? And still make it economically feasible? Because I have yet to see something advertised as organic that costs less than non-organically produced food. I have yet to see it happen. And my question is, if we go all organic, does this then also go back to what I keep on bringing up about population management?
Yeah. I
Okay,
don't know.
I mean,
And I
because by default, what's implied is food will be organic from now on, but that also means that it's for whoever can afford to pay for it. The food is only for people who can afford to pay for it.
let's tap into a couple more mailbags.
You've
Yeah.
got mail.
Beeman said, using the Suburban application planner, I have fescue set at 0.75 pounds every month, Bermuda 1 pound event per month. How would you alter the numbers for Zoysia and Centipede? I know Centipede is a tough animal, but it's here. How high over the recommended potassium numbers would you go if trying to raise the K levels to 100 parts per million? All right, this is kind of a lot to unpack here. First, I do not know what the nutrient removal rate of Centipede is, and I don't know what it is for Zoysia either. And I think a lot of that is going to come down to Zoysia cultivars. Probably going to be a little bit more extreme in removal rates than compared to most Bermudas. You do see some variabilities in Bermuda too, right? So TIF grand removal rate is not going to be the same as like Celebration. And there was another one, Patriot, I think is one of those that the removal rate on Patriot was almost a 1-to-1 in decay. So there's a lot of variability. Ray, off the top of your head, do you know what the removal rate of Zoysia is? Is it going to be different between Matrella and Japonica? I don't know.
Actually, it all depends on how much clippings are generated by that Zoysia and whether those clippings are removed or not. Because earlier this month, I related that unfortunate experience where I came to a lawn that had all of its clippings removed every week for the past 6 months, and I actually saw the grass running out of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and micronutrients because of that clipping removal. So it all depends on your cultural practices, but in cases where somebody is not removing clippings, Zoysia actually does not remove very much from the soil, provided the clippings are returned 100%. And likewise, Centipede also has a fairly low nutrient removal rate, if that helps answer the question.
Yep. So Beeman, again, I would, they're not apples to apples, so it would not be applicable to use that general 412 removal rate as the same for Zoysia and Centipede. Here's the other
answer?
thing. What's that?
Till it up.
No
and just plant
fucking idea.
Just till it up. Just plant Bermuda.
Yeah.
Go on.
I mean,
I'm sorry,
that would be
That was
okay. Ryan, actually, for me,
Road grader.
the use case for Centipede would generally be in low pH, low phosphorus soils where Centipede and even Zoysia struggles. Because likewise, I've
Sounds like the
seen
Piedmont region of North Carolina.
and because likewise, I've seen instances where somebody decides to be avant-garde and installs Zoysia on pH 5 soils. And
That's
boy,
called
howdy.
artisan, Ray. That's artisan Zoysia.
Yeah. And boy, howdy, I then get the phone call about, why is my Zoysia thinning out? It looks really lime green and it's, not healthy. And I draw the soil test, Matt, pH 5 soil. And you know what my other clue is? every other house in that neighborhood has centipede. And that centipede doesn't get fertilizer, doesn't get lime. All people do there in that neighborhood is cut the damn grass. But this one person wants to be special and has zoysia.
Well, sometimes that's me. Here, we'll do one more mailbag here. This is from Greg Maggio. He said, is it possible you can tell me what weed this is and how to control it? What we have here is when I see the shiny leaves like that, that tells me that is bull paspal.
Yikes.
If I'm identifying that correctly, I believe those shiny leaves are bull paspalum. And paspalum varieties, what are you dipping into, Ray? You're going sulfonyl ureas?
Absolutely. I am going full on SU. And of course, it depends on what kind of grass you need to selectively remove this bull paspalum from.
Because typically where I'm seeing this is going to be in a Bermuda. And I see what looks like some Bermuda runners in the background.
Okay, because if you got to remove this from Bermuda, you're in good luck. Because your best friends become Monument, Revolver, Celsius, and if you want to get spicy, you do like what works well for me is, for example, a Celsius and Monument combination or a Revolver and Celsius combination. And you just
or you can do a tribute total.
Or you can do a tribute total if you want to keep it simple. And the only caveat to using tribute total is in that tribute total application, you're going to be applying halosulfuron.
Yeah.
And you think now, do you need halosulfuron somewhere in your program for controlling purple nutsedge? Because if you really need your halosulfuron, I would think hard about blowing it on a combination product going after grassy weeds. My preference would be to always hold back my halosulfuron so that I can address a nutsedge emergence without going over the label, because my understanding is that even halosulfuron, you are capped at so many applications per year and so much AI per year.
I forgot there was one thing I left out about Patrick Beeman's question there. Okay, so 100 pounds of K2O per acre will raise soil potassium by 41.5 parts per million. 100 pounds of K2O per acre is 41.5 parts per million. So anyway, there's the simple math there. All right, let's check out this week's return. La 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 la. La 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 la. I'm back. Westfield Teen, if I recall correctly, Westfield is that up in Ohio?
There's a Westfield. You know who lives real close to Westfield, and by real close I mean he could probably stand in his front lawn and pee into Westfield. Is our good friend.
Is that Jimmy Beveridge?
No, Pat Kelly.
Pat Kelly,
the rowing redhead himself.
Chill out, he said.
The rowing
audiologist.
Calm down.
The audiologist, the jacked audiologist.
So let's see what we got on here. What's going on?
Yeah, he's got a new businessman in town, and it is Jonah Papacek. He started his own lawn care business after several years of cutting his family's grass and observing professional lawn care. The 13-year-old Westfield resident launched Jonah's Lawn Service in 2021 and brought in about $2,000 in profits. At the end of the season, he expects his profits to be around $4,000 to $5,000. I just like being able to go outside and see that I make something look good. I feel like I have a lot of freedom when I do it. Jonah's the sole proprietor of Jonah's Lawn Service, a Westfield neighborhood business that offers mowing, trimming, edging, and most recently mulching. Jonah's parents, Sheila and Jason Papacek, said their son applies his knack for art and design to his lawn business. He designed multiple flyers advertising his service, and he created a logo that he now wears on a t-shirt, which features a caricature style drawing of himself on a tractor and a rainbow lettering spelled out Jonah's Lawn Service. I had my first shirt before I had any customers. Now he's got 10 or 11 yards and works up to around 30 hours a week. When he enters 8th grade in the fall, he said he might have to work more on the weekends to keep up with his customers. Mama Bear says she's proud of her son's ability to excel in school and operate his business at the same time. I'm just floored by the determination, the motivation. I'm not sure how he handles juggling everything. Jason Papachek said his son's business has been beneficial not only to Jonah, but also to the family. The Papacheks moved to a different house at the beginning of the pandemic. Jonah's Lawn Service helped introduce and acquaint them to new neighbors. As restrictions started to lift, we found ourselves introducing ourselves instead of who we were, more as we're Jonah's parents, he said. Everybody knows Jonah from his lawn care business. Jonah continues to improve his lawn services and techniques by watching YouTube channels that specialize in lawn care and upgrading his equipment. Good Lord, I hope he doesn't watch us. His next goal is to purchase a commercial grade mower. The tractor I have now, it does a good job. It's not a large commercial piece of equipment that can stripe a lawn like a golf course. In the future, I'd like to get one of those so I can really make people's yards look good. Jonah said as he genuinely enjoys lawn care and wants to grow his business through high school and beyond. I plan on doing it as long as I can do it, pretty much until I retire. Kudos to young man here out there getting the damn thing done.
Now, listen, there is something I need to correct here because this guy is not Pat Kelly's neighbor. This is Westfield, Indiana. And the one thing that we can say about Westfield, Indiana, and just the state of Indiana in general, is if you live there, there seems to be this thing going around where you have you design a logo and put it on a green shirt before you ever have any sort of tangible business or reason to do so. But Joan has actually done something. He wasn't, just featured on the local news and puts out SF Gate articles. This dude is out here getting it done like a man who's 40, but he's actually like 13 or 14, whatever. So look at this bastard.
Dang.
I was this kid once, but I didn't have a tractor. I wasn't that cool. It was all city lots I mowed when I was a ute like that.
Hey, Jonah, I'll gladly give up 10 people on YouTube lawn care for you to take their place. How about them apples? Because I'm sure the value that you put out is probably 10 times more effective than 10 of their
what
content.
This just gave me a great idea. We should, you could call it like fantasy football or something like that, but we should run a YouTube lawn care league in which we rank wins and losses, and maybe this will start with Joe Knows Turf, which we're going to get to here in just a second. Rank wins and losses, and then guess what, fellas? If you are in the bottom 2 or something like that, like what they do in European football, you get relegated, and your ass has to go down to Vimeo, right, to do all your shit. I think that's what we should do. YouTube Lawn Care League. It's going to happen. We're going to figure out how to do this in 2023. I can't wait. And go down there to Vimeo with all the weirdos. You might as well be on Tumblr before they took all the bad stuff off there.
Well, in lieu of what Jonah has been able to bring some joy to our lives, let's show Jonah what he should avoid when he's carousing the YouTube lawn care space, and go ahead and highlight this week's Joe Knows Turf. Joe
Knows Turf.
Yes, he does.
Hi, I'm
Joe.
I'm gonna give you a bunch of accurate turf facts today because
Joe
knows turf.
All right. So this week, DeMay has put up has found something that's absolutely fascinating here. Talk to us about it.
Well, all right. I think it's anytime it's natural. The big fish in the pond is going to be the biggest target, right? And today, the video that we're going to watch is maybe a little bit of that. I think there's I can't say because I haven't watched the video, but the title has some undertones of jealousy and envy, right? Maybe even a little bit of David versus Goliath, if I should say so much. But let's go ahead and watch and see what happens here and try to unpack what's going on with the claim about one fertilizer being better than another fertilizer. Because, fellas, if there's anything that we want to do on the last part of Father's Day here, it's to get in a prick waving contest with the fertilizer bags.
Guys, this is Brian with Turf Mechanics. Today is June 4th, and while I still have temperate spring weather, I'm going to be making some summer applications to my lawn, things that I'm putting down at the end of spring to get me through the heat and stresses that come with summer. Now, earlier this season, I don't know, maybe at the end of winter, first part of spring, I loaded up my Yard Mastery shopping cart with Yard Mastery's Summer Stress Blend with the plan of putting it down around this time of the year. I've been planning this for a long time, but I hesitated, and ultimately I decided to not pull the trigger. It's just not my style to put down all-in-one products. I like piecing things together exactly the way that my lawn needs it at that given time. Not only did I think that I could do better than applying the stress blend that Yard Mastery offers, but I also don't particularly care for putting down manufactured products in my lawn. I would much rather put down the most organic, the most naturally sourced products I possibly could, the most naturally sourced inputs that I possibly could on my lawn. Now, the Yard Mastery Stress Blend, we all call it Summer Stress Blend because that's really the best time to put it down. But the Stress Blend is a 7-0-20 with micronutrients and iron. That makes perfect sense to be putting down going into summer for cool season grasses. It also really makes a lot of sense to put down towards the end of summer for warm season grasses, but that's a whole nother point. Now, although the urea, which is the base
first off, no, that is not necessarily what needs to go down. If you have been in a situation where you're only applying potassium and you're in and you are deficient in potassium, I'm sorry, where you've only been applying nitrogen and you're deficient in potassium and you're trying to quickly raise your soil K levels, then it makes sense to do it. But again, what you're doing is loading the soil with K, and then it becomes subject to leaching and all that fun stuff. And, in mass lawn care situation, what I call volume lawn care, sometimes you have to do that. Particularly in homeowner type situations, you don't necessarily have to do that because you have the flexibility of doing more frequent applications, and you can choose a little bit more applicable ratios to avoid you from running into a situation where you have to load it all at one time. Or in many cases, sometimes that we see that, we've looked at how many soil tests over here, that sometimes you're cruising at 200 parts per million of potassium, and applying a 7-0-20 at any point of the year when you have 200 parts per million of potassium is going to do absolutely nothing for you, whether you have stress there or not. It just is not going to do anything for you for stress. So let's go ahead and get that out of the play, that on the plate, and so we can continue watching the rest of this.
Nutrient for nitrogen in the stress blend is polymer coated, which makes it a lot slower acting than some non-coated versions of urea. The potassium aspect of the stress blend is a mixture of SOP and MOP. MOP is the non-organic form of potash. SOP I would prefer to put down all by itself because that is OMRI listed. It is listed for organic use. Now, the stress blend also comes with a whole bunch of micronutrients.
Let's pause it there. And this is where the whole organic thing gets real weird, because both KCL and SOP are mined products, right? One has to go through a washing step, and the other one doesn't. I don't know why you couldn't label KCL, probably because of that washing step. You couldn't label it Omri. In reality, when you're choosing between the two, the only reason that you would really look at one versus the other, in my opinion, would be the chlorine content that you may or may not need and the salt index of the product. And so, but this idea that one is going to be safer or whatever because of the Omri listing on it, that's not factual. What would make it a quote unquote safer product would be the fact that SOP has a lower soluble, less of it can go into solution over a given volume of water as KCL. And then also the salt index of KCL is going to be significantly higher than SOP. So one is less soluble, meaning you have less potential for runoff and leaching and all that fun stuff, while the other one is a lot less salty. And in fact, DeMay, can we do the picture right now just to show an example?
No.
Okay.
If we crop it down so we can get rid of the background there, J Pink, and just show the grass.
Yeah, let here. I can crop that
while you're doing that. While you're doing that, I want to share this real quick. Related to potassium, and I'll speak on this for a moment. Is that this idea that you're gonna have to there? Look at that. Potassium is influencing stress, right? In stress response. So before we get into the physiology piece, let's just take it out of the big picture, right? Okay, so this is a study from 2018. Person from Oregon State, right? Yeah. No. I'll send the link here. It's from Korea. Okay. So the study is entitled Potassium Rate and Mowing Height for Kentucky Bluegrass Growth, right? So they're looking at those two factors. So what they find here, right, is that once you get above 28.5 C, which is about 83 degrees Fahrenheit, there's really no influence whatsoever on potassium relative to growth or health of the turf, okay? So if you read further down here, when air temperature is optimal with a high mowing height of more than 100 millimeters, and the low K rate is needed for growth of the root length, right? So essentially what they're saying here is that, again, the plant response that you get from higher rates of potassium and higher temperature is pretty much null and void. What's going to get into the plant is going to get into the plant through mass flow, right, in which you need water for that to actually take place, right? And if you don't have water, if you're in I know.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ray, real quick, talk about mass flow and how potassium enters the plant.
Okay. Potassium follows water, right? And so if you have water, the potassium dissolves in that water and the plant roots take up that water. However, here's the caveat. Do you know why I always harp about salt indexes and chlorides?
Mm-hmm.
It is because under conditions of water stress and heat stress, here's what happens to grass that is under extreme heat stress.
Mm-hmm.
That grass is actually not able to take up water. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's not able to take up water. But whatever salts you happen to have applied, then pool and concentrate in the soil. So what'll happen is you then have your grass sitting in a condition of very high salts. Now, potassium, specifically potassium chloride, can become extremely harmful, especially to cool season grasses that are under conditions of heat and drought stress. And that is all entirely due to its issue with salt index combined with that pooling of salt at the roots.
Go ahead and throw that up real quick, J-Pink.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, this is great right here.
Oh, this is good. This is
so
here we've got listed out
Matt,
individual salt indexes here. Basically, this is a chart of what's going to tell you that the higher the salt index, the higher the likelihood of you to induce quote unquote fertilizer burn, right? And I wish there was one on here that's on the other one, and that's potassium thiosulfate, because I see the nutrient, and I'm going to call nutrient out here, nutrient turf guys pushing potassium thiosulfate onto lawn care guys. And if you think potassium chloride has a high potential for fertilizer burn, potassium thiosulfate, get ready to set your ass on fire, because again, another one with a relatively high salt index there. So just be careful. So anyway, yes, this is in effect the likely how likely it is. The higher the number, the greater the probability of you inducing fertilizer burn. How about that?
All right, let's skip back to the video here real quick, and let's skip ahead and see what's going to be implied that is better than. Keep going back a little bit. Keep going back a little bit. Oh man.
Prevent diseases and resist drought and heat stress that we're going to get at some point in the months of June, July, and August. I'd also really like to get some soil build. I always try to get soil building inputs into my lawn whenever I'm making applications. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be applying 2 granular products, both from the same company, Lawn Box. I'm going to be putting down Lawn Lux and their soil building product, Soil Saver. I'm also going to be adding in a liquid micronutrient application from Simple Grow Solutions. It's their micro booster. This is basically going to give me N and K with a whole bunch of humic acid, some other soil building ingredients in the Soil Saver box, calcium, and then a good number of micronutrients in that liquid micro booster product. All of those micros are chelated. They're chelated. I don't know how to pronounce it. They're all readily available for the plant, as opposed to the micronutrients that are in the stress blend that we mentioned earlier in this video. In the Lawn Lux product, the nitrogen is being sourced from soybean meal. The potassium is being sourced from OMRI listed potassium sulfate. And the product comes with a bit of sulfur and 5% humic acid. The Soil Saver product comes with a lot of extra humic acid and a good number of extra miscellaneous soil building ingredients. I get calcium in the Soil Saver product, and then all of the other minor nutrients, including iron, are going to be coming in from the Micro Booster product. Everything that I'm going to be putting down today is going to be plant available pretty much right away. The humic acid is going to take some time to incorporate into the soil, but that's not really going to push me through the summer. That's just, I'm getting it along with all of the stuff that I actually want. And then all of the azomite that I've applied to the lawn, like over the past couple years or so, is slowly incorporating in and becoming available year after year after year. It's the long play, like I said. Now, I also understand that not everybody likes applying liquid fertilizers or liquid applications to the lawn. Spraying is just a little bit more complicated than applying granular products to the lawn, even though you've got a little bit more versatility with the liquids. If I was going to go with a granular minor product as opposed to the Simple Grow Solutions liquid version, I'd probably go for the Simple Ag Essential Miners granular product. Sometimes it's available on Do My Own.
So Matt, I think really what we need here is, if you're Joe on the street, our Joe too, right? So
Joe.
It takes a little. Yeah, it takes a little bit of thinking when you're looking at some bags to get an idea. Go ahead, J Pink, and throw up that Lawn Lux label that he talked about there. And Matt, just do our Joe Knows Turf version of label reading here. What are we looking at, and is this all going to be plant available as soon as it hits the ground, as Brian said?
No. So if we look under total nitrogen here, we have our nitrate nitrogen, we have our water insoluble nitrogen, and our other water soluble nitrogen. What we can deduce based on the derived from statement, where I have 2 things highlighted here, is that our water insoluble nitrogen and our other water soluble nitrogen is derived from soybean meal. Soybean meal typically has an analysis of a 7-1-2. So if we have roughly 4.5% nitrogen from it, so that gives us 60% of this product is relatively not available at all once it goes down. What is available when it goes down would be the 2 3/4 nitrate nitrogen, and that would be derived from sodium nitrate. And sodium nitrate got glossed over there, and is an important piece of this because, hey, it's organic. Chilean, what is it called? Chilean nitrogen is the old name for it, I believe.
Chilean nitrate, and
yeah.
here's the thing. I would be very remiss to ever apply something to soil that has sodium in it.
Yeah. Why are we not out applying sodium to soil, Ray?
Yeah, it's because I believe that when you get above 75 parts per million of sodium, you got problems, especially if you are talking about growing a cool season grass besides seaside bent grass. If we're talking about growing turf type tall fescue or Kentucky bluegrass, all those grasses are on a low sodium diet mandatory. They do not do well with salt at all. And when I say salt, I'm specifically referring to sodium. So, old boy over here is essentially giving his grass a dose of salt, whether he knows it or not.
Yeah. So again, and to bring all this back together, that when we're are talking about designing applications to mitigate stress, and as Ryan pointed out, the stress positive responses we're going to get are come in the form of optimal temperatures, not in excessive temperatures, because again, we're relying on mass flow and all that. Then the second piece of this is the product that's been put together of a lawn lux, and then another one that contained calcium sulfate as gypsum, and then we've got a little sodium nitrate and soybean meal. There's nothing really about this that is pointing it as an advantage of one over the other. And if it's the concept that it's going to be plant available, well, it's not necessarily that either. So while this sounds fun and good, it is a great way to highlight your Lawn Lux box that Anderson's is putting out there. And it's a great way to capitalize on the search engine optimization pool that you're going to get from plugging another fucking Yard Mastery product. This is a very, very creative way to market something and to bring it out to people. However, the factuality behind each statement for each of the products that were put forth here is horrifically wrong. And the idea of the benefits you're going to get from these products is horrifically wrong. And so, A for creativity, a D for execution, and F for the quality of information that was put out there. So, thank you. And this has been our Joe Knows Turf. All right, boys, we're going to wrap this up. We got a few more mailbags. We're going to have to dip into these on Friday because it gets pretty intense, especially with this next one coming up with smart parts. There's going to be a lot to unpack there. And I will say this to the guy Brian that wrote in. No, that does not sound extreme. And then he wants to talk about silica, and then we can get into that too. So we got two questions that are like a 10-part question, and then one that's going to be like a 4-part question. So anyway, we'll get into that on Thursday. Gentlemen, thank you all for hanging out. I completely glossed over our sponsor, who was our patron this week. I'm sorry, I'm not all together. I had a long weekend in Nashville. Happy birthday to my wife. I hope you had a great time. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Remember, step up to the plate, be a great dad, be a great partner to your spouse, and all that fun stuff. The responsibility is on you. Show the world that you got what it takes. All right, boys. We'll see y'all on Thursday.